Hello. So, you guys have heard me talk about two existential realities before of energy and consciousness. I'm going to explain why dealing only with energy, which is what most people are doing, is the incorrect way. Like it's not really a way necessarily unto itself, unless certain conditions are met. And even then it's not the same as becoming aware, right? Okay. So, with energy, you guys have the consciousness or the energy scale. It says the scale of consciousness. It should be called the scale of the state of the states of consciousness, but not the scale of consciousness itself, because consciousness doesn't exist on any scale. Okay, but energy does. Now, energy can either be low vibration, which is low frequency, low energy, to high vibrational, which is high frequency, high energy, right? And anything in between. What comes along with that is, like, if I had to put it this way, you know, think of like at the bottom, or really anywhere, but like at the bottom of the scale, right? So, like, which is like despair. Do you have anything available to you other than like despair and maybe like grief and like anger, like really, really low vibrational like energies? No, you don't. So then, whenever it comes to high vibrational energies, you don't really have access until you've at least crossed the neutrality threshold. So, low vibrational energies take a lot of energy to produce, and they take a lot of energy to, um, how would I say, to operate, you know? It takes a lot of energy to operate. That's why those low vibrational energies tire you out, really, and just don't feel good at all. And why you know, for in that same way, the high vibrational energies are the opposite. They give you energy. They give you energy. And so you can't, and this is the thing, an actually high vibrational person, like person who's actually able to hold and maintain naturally, not by doing all kinds of stuff and telling themselves stuff that's not really real, but someone who is actually high vibrational pisses off low vibrational people. At best, they tire them out by being around them, by being around that energy. It tires them out. But for the most part, do not like people who are low vibrational do not really like high vibrational people. And if they do, it's probably because they have they're like famous to some degree. But not always. Not always. If they're really low vibrational, they're probably going to see those people as enemies. Of like someone who's like can't be trusted, basically. Or who's like doing a bunch of bad stuff and is hurting people, which is not really, really not usually the case. It's usually very much so an extremely compassionate and benevolent thing that they're doing, right? But it's because low vibrational, that's all they have access to, and they can't really see past that. Okay, and so there's a point where you start to reach neutrality. When you reach neutrality, that's when the energy, like specifically whenever it comes to like emotions, don't feel good or bad, and it doesn't take an excess amount of energy to produce or to operate it one way or the other. It's neutral. It's really neutral, and so it leaves a lack of an impression. Now, that energy, right? That state of consciousness, not consciousness itself, but state of consciousness, because of the energy, right? So I explained how that works. You guys have all kind of know that, right? So let's not get energy and consciousness mixed up, because the energy that is available can alter the state of consciousness, but it cannot necessarily raise consciousness on its own. It just doesn't happen like that. Even though many people are trying to do that, it just doesn't happen like that. But basically, once you reach the neutrality point, you reach a point where most people, what I've seen, most egos misunderstand this point as empty and there's nothing and it's boring. Whereas they're just energetically reaching a place of neutrality. Now, in terms of consciousness, that is actually a different conversation, right? That's actually a different conversation. Consciousness is literally awareness. It is not privy to necessarily the energetic scale. Now, the state of consciousness may change, but it's due to your identification. Now, beyond that is just awareness. There is an aspect of you which is just aware and isn't imposing itself. Okay? Isn't imposing itself at all, right? And so it seems like there's nothing there unless you're getting intuitive nudges and stuff and hits and stuff like that. That's when you're kind of like, oh, something's probably there, but you don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. And the thing is like intuition, it's like, to most people, it's like, to people who are like that, it's because they can't see. They're not aware. They actually can't see it. They don't know where the intuition is coming from. So they have to go off of the felt sense, which is, generally speaking, what's happening. That is a lack of consciousness. That is a lack of consciousness. Okay? It should be easy to see that. So in terms of energy, what everybody's doing in terms of energy whenever it comes to, dealing with their nervous system and clearing out energies, if they're actually doing that, most of the time I see that they're not really doing that. They're doing something else, but they think that they're doing that. And it's like, it's just because it comes from a basic misunderstanding, basically. But it's like, it's the circle, the hamster wheel of healing. Have you ever noticed why there's never, it seems to be any lasting change or lasting effects necessarily? If any lasting change or lasting effects that do happen, it usually comes from like self-concept scripting, where people are basically changing the architecture of their ego. Not entirely. I know it probably feels like that to them, but usually they're only really making small tweaks. But because they're so identified with every aspect of their ego, and because it seems like it's everything, even a minuscule, infinitesimal, like a tiny change, feels monumental. And in terms of the world and the results you may produce in the world, it may actually produce much better results than you were otherwise getting. And so it probably seems like something's really going on, but all you're really doing is playing around with illusions. I want you to understand fundamentally, like in terms of energy and consciousness, in terms of existential reality, that is actually what you're doing. And if you think that something else is happening, you're under a powerful delusion, born from a misunderstanding, a perceptual misunderstanding. Okay, because it's like you guys will collect spiritual teachings. Basically, you'll collect spiritual teachings, but you only really believe you're putting them into practice. For the most part, that's just what I see. That is just what I see. And I'm here to basically reorient everybody, to give people a slight, like a practice that works for them, that they don't have to think about how it works. Because I see a lot of this too, where people they talk about, my Kundalini yoga thing, and they'll have like a YouTube channel, and they'll have like maybe like a place that they go to, and they're doing all kinds of stuff, but it's got nothing to do with yoga. It has nothing necessarily to do with Kundalini. Even if they're messing with it, they're doing it in a way that's actually harmful. And they're just ignoring that, right? But how would they know? They can't know. They can't know. It's like they're trying to fix a car in pitch black darkness, but they're not a mechanic. It's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. In fact, you're probably going to hurt yourself or just mess with the machine in a way that makes it much more difficult to repair. Maybe it didn't even really need repairs, but now it does because you were messing with it. It's like that, okay? And they're taking your money to boot, usually thousands at a time, okay? So I'm here to just simplify things because this is like, it doesn't need to be like this. Spirituality is actually quite easy, but you kind of have to do it for a little bit before you see what's actually happening, before you get any kind of effects. Because you may be playing around in energy and you feel like stuff is happening, but you'll go ahead deluding yourself for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 lifetimes, or even much more, messing around with stuff like that. And people have, and people do. Like, you think, a lot of these tarot readers and all these people, y'all have been doing this stuff for lifetimes on lifetimes. Tell me, do you think that, like, you're in a different place truly, spiritually, than you were maybe 10 lifetimes ago? I mean, perhaps. But, like, most people have not even really got out of, like, kindergarten, basically, spiritually speaking, because they're so focused on playing make-believe and that they're somewhere else. Be here now, guys. It's really that simple. Be here now. But it's not be here now in a way that tries to disregard things and say that it's something else. Even if you're doing it just to manifest. You can manifest without disregarding anything. And in fact, it works much better that way. Right? But it's like, spiritually speaking, if you're trying to circumvent that way, just know that you can't. You can't circumvent, but you trying to do that only pretty much exacerbates the problem. It's kind of like, now, it's not that it actually is a wound, but just for analogy's sake, it's like if you had a wound and instead of going and fixing the actual wound itself, you're just cleaning the blood and you're just making, trying to make it look good, but not actually dealing with the actual problem. Does that make sense? And so nothing really happens, but it looks like it is. And you believe it. That's all ego. Now, as it pertains to twin flames, now the difficult part of the twin flames is dealing with the energy, but the consciousness happened in an instant, just took you there. But all the energy that's all the residual energy, basically, like, and also just in a basic sense, it's all the residual energy that you were identified with that's catching up with you, being like, hey, where are you going? Like, it's like a part of itself left itself behind, but the part of itself that got left behind is still attached because of identification. Now, for twin flames, right? Think about the obsessive thinking. What does that show you? What is that directly showing you? It's directly showing you that you're not your mind. But what do all the twin flames do? They get profoundly caught up in their mind. Because whenever they have an awakening experience, which was like the recognition, that's a genuine awakening experience. Okay? That's what awakening experiences are like. They're like very powerful and unmistakable. That is a genuine awakening experience. But most people, they have the experience, right? And then their ego immediately takes hold of it and they believe that they're awakened and enlightened and stuff. And so they immediately try to start becoming a person in the world. But it doesn't happen as quickly as it otherwise would because of all the energy that they're dealing with, basically. The residual energy, that is basically causing the obsessive thinking. It's all that. It's all that stuff. Everything, really everything. Because beneath that is the twin. There's the real twin, but you guys are getting caught up in the karmic. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, it's not the actual person. It's the essence of the person that is your twin flame, not the person. Just like you aren't your person. Like I'm not this person. But the essence that's being essentially channeled and flowing through this person is who and what I really am. And it's the same thing for everyone and it's the same thing for everyone else too. Okay? So then, if that's the case, why does it seem to be like impossible to get to the other side with the, just spiritually speaking, but it's even when it's something that's made so easy as the twin flame journey, not even necessarily saying that it's easy, because it's crazy, but it's like you're literally taken to the end. You don't even have to do anything anymore. You actually don't have to do anything, but it seems like you do because of ego. That's really what it is. So then, spiritually speaking, if you're not actively trying to dismantle or see through your ego, like as if it was transparent, or at the very least, or even confront the ego in a way that's like trying to ascertain its nature and its existence, trying to apprehend it in a way. If you're not doing those three things in an attempt specifically to dismantle your ego and your relationships that ego identification creates, but also, or seeing through it and also aiding in its dissolution. If you're not doing that, then you're not doing anything spiritual. You're not doing anything to do with spirituality. There's a lot of things that you can be doing. Like, one of the things that mainly people like to do is they like to chase these siddhis and these things like this where, they become a little bit more capable than they otherwise were. But to them, they feel like gods, even though it's like, it's they're not really doing too much, but it's something a little bit more than what they were typically privy to. So it seems like a world's difference. Just like what I was saying, like even a slight change seems like a world's difference. But it's like, for the most part, whenever it comes to a lot of these things, these powers and stuff that people are tapping into, it's inherent capabilities that everybody has, but they're just going into it and developing it a little bit. But that little bit can actually make a big difference in certain ways. But it's you're going in the wrong direction. Because if you go in the other direction, the direction that you're actively shunning and trying not to go into, and you're fighting tooth and nail and claw to not have to do that, is where you get all the stuff that you're chasing in spades. You just get access. It's not this arduous thing where you're trying to get this thing to operate all the time. It's just access. Okay? If that's what you want, instead of playing around in samsara and in Maya, then contact me. My email is on the channel, is on the about section of my channel. Shoot me an email of your Discord and we can start a conversation going. My idea is that I would like to set up a consultation where I could see where you're at, where you're trying to go spiritually, metaphysically, all these sorts of things, just to like you go to get car insurance and you start to get a quote, you do the questionnaire. It's like that, where I'm trying to gauge where I'm going to gauge where you're at and where you're trying to go and stuff like that, and I'll give you the perfect practices and basically the things that you need to know for that. Okay? So you don't need to worry about that. But whenever it comes to you guys dealing with energy and those sorts of things, the only really good thing to come out of doing anything like that is to make the journey easier. In my next video, I'll explain how doing that can make the journey substantially easier. But it's not the journey in and of itself, even though most people mistake it for that. Okay, so watch out for that. But for this video, it's over, and I'll catch y'all next time. Bye.